Bird flu hasn't been seen in the U.S. since 2015, but earlier this month, authorities had to spring into action after an outbreak in Pennsylvania in the eastern United States. It's thought Iowa was also seriously affected, and some farmers have had to kill in excess of 1 million birds in some cases, mostly commercial layer chickens. Today we're discussing the bird flu outbreak in Pennsylvania, so stay right where you are. First up, what exactly is it? Let's see. Influenza is a family of viruses which not only affects humans but also animals, including birds. The term avian flu, or more commonly bird flu, exclusively refers to the type of influenza found in birds. Like in humans, avian flu is relatively common in birds, and an infected bird can usually quite easily overcome the virus. And rest assured, most of these flu strains cannot transfer over to humans. However, there is a specific type of virus that can be transferred to humans: low pathogenic avian influenza viruses. The AH729 strain found in China back in 2013 can cause severe disease in humans, whilst it is asymptomatic or causes very mild symptoms in birds. The low pathogenic version of the disease has the ability to mutate into a highly pathogenic virus, which, as you might imagine, is very infectious. The strain of the disease has an extremely high rate of mortality in poultry and can come on very quickly. Bird flu outbreaks can cause havoc on poultry farms in particular, but the highly pathogenic version is, importantly, not related to humans, thankfully. However, the H5 and H7 subtypes need immediate measures to prevent bird-to-human crossovers. What do you know about bird flu? Give us your thoughts below. So, what happened in Pennsylvania? Stay tuned to find out. On April 16th, a bird flu outbreak was reported in Pennsylvania, affecting a commercial flock. Also affected was a backyard flock in Utah. Since the first reported outbreak, there have been reports of cases in more than 30 states across the country. The outbreak marks the first serious problem of bird flu in 7 years, and it's thought that so far, farmers have had to euthanize in excess of 20 million chickens. Earlier this month, the USDA said samples from the Pennsylvania flock were tested at the Pennsylvania Veterinary Laboratory, and samples from the Utah flock were tested at the Utah Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, both part of the National Animal Health Laboratory Network. It has been suggested that the recent highly pathogenic avian influenza doesn't present an immediate threat to human populations close by, but it will certainly be something that needs to be monitored. However, the big worry is that importers in other countries could potentially ban American poultry, worried that the virus could spread within their country. It has also been suggested that the U.S. could develop a vaccine for the viruses, but the problem here is that importing countries cannot tell which birds are vaccinated and which aren't, so they may just throw a blanket ban on all imports. The poultry export business is worth northwards of $4 billion per year for the U.S., and China has already moved to ban poultry from affected states, which could have grave consequences for the U.S. market. What can backyard farmers do to protect their flocks then? Let's discuss. You might remember the famous scene from Rocky, where the titular character chased a chicken around as part of his training. It's a seriously hard endeavor, but short of this, how can farmers protect their birds? After a Lancaster County farm had to put down over 1 million chickens, panic spread in the farming community. More than 100 farms in the vicinity were placed under quarantine, but backyard farmers are also worried. Of course, they see some of these birds as pets, so letting them roam free in backyards is now pretty much out of the question. And one lady who keeps chickens in her yard, Allison Sanka, explained that her chickens aren't happy about their new situation and will cluck loudly at the door of their pen to get out. This is obviously a short-term measure to protect them and to further protect the flock. Farmers can change their footwear every time they go into the coop area and then disinfect them once they've finished. One of the main ways the virus can spread is through the droppings of infected birds, so it's imperative to clean them off thoroughly. Farmers might also consider changing their feed and not letting their birds roam free to eat weeds and other potential foodstuff which could have been infected, as well as keeping a close eye on their birds for symptoms which include coughing, wheezing, and bubbles in the eye. Do you keep chickens? Are you worried about this? News of a human infection now. Stay with us. It has been reported earlier today that the first crossover case of the recent bird flu outbreak has affected an inmate in the Colorado prison system. The patient was taking part in a work release program at a poultry farm, and it's thought that he was exposed after taking part in a culling. The man, who is thought to be in his 30s, reported feeling fatigue for a few days before making a full recovery. However, as a precaution, the inmate is still being isolated from the rest of the prison population and has also been treated with an antiviral drug known as oseltamivir. After the case was identified, all other employees at the farm were provided with personal protective equipment, but have since tested negative. The farm where the inmates were working, Foster Farms, was taking place in a selective slaughtering program in a bid to control the outbreak, and it's thought that they have had to kill around 60,000 chickens. Of course, this will come as a big concern to the Department of Health and Human Services, especially after what has gone on over the past 2 years. But right now, this seems to be the only case of the H5 strain, and the CDC have said that this case does not change the human risk assessment for the general public, which CDC considers to be low. However, those who work with poultry should take appropriate precautions. Are you worried about an outbreak in humans? News of a mass culling in Iowa now. Stick around for this one. Following the recent bird flu outbreak, workers at one of the world's biggest egg factories have revealed they've killed more than 5 million chickens over the past month in an effort to bring the current outbreak under control, but were then treated pretty poorly themselves. Workers at the facility in Rembrandt, Iowa were instructed back in March that they were to forget about their usual routine, which would have seen them collecting eggs, feeding chickens, and taking part in general maintenance tasks. Instead, they were told they would now be taking part in the mass killing of 5 million birds, thanks to a solitary case of bird flu. Of course, there's no way of telling if the virus had spread between other chickens, and the likelihood is that it would have. However, the culling signifies the largest in the country to date, which has so far seen more than 22 million birds culled across the country. Workers spent almost a month completing the gruesome task, and once they had completed their grisly duties, they too were then thrown to the wayside. The farm owner, Glenn Taylor, who also owns the Minnesota Timberwolves basketball team, decided to let the crew go as there was no role for them with limited chickens to tend after the culling, proving that they too were seen as expendable. One worker said they, the workers, couldn't protest because then they'd be fired and lose their redundancy pay. Then they're thrown out of work anyway and no one speaks for them. What do you guys make of this? And finally, news of an outbreak in England. Following the mass outbreak across the pond, another case in the UK has now been reported. A backyard flock in the small Derbyshire town of Ilkeston has apparently been affected by the H5N1 strain, and a perimeter has now been set up to try to manage the spread. There's a 3-kilometer protection zone in place directly around the affected premises, as well as a 10-kilometer surveillance zone. This outbreak comes shortly after another outbreak in the Hallam area of Yorkshire, which saw 13 swans and Canadian geese found dead. And Councillor Carol Hart, who serves as the English County's Cabinet Minister for Health and Communities, said, "Unfortunately, we have had another confirmed case of avian flu in Derbyshire, and our trading standards officers, along with colleagues at Nottinghamshire, are working closely with the relevant government agencies to help reduce the spread of the disease." She went on to say that anyone in the county who keeps birds must follow the rules to the letter. Of course, the last thing the world needs is another pandemic in humans or animals, so hopefully people stick to the advice. As always, thanks for stopping by today, and remember to join us next time when we'll be discussing other bits and pieces. Also, why not do us a solid by liking and sharing today's video, as well as subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on any more of our future great content. Bye guys!